Seeking housekeeper to stay overnight and lock me in the basement. No experience required. By colorblindness. My name is Matthew Conrad, and I have lived in the town of Rochester, New York for longer than most. That's thanks in part to my strict diet and exercise, but most of all I owe it to my housekeeper Bernard. Very few people understand me like Bernie did, and I'm afraid now that he's gone I am at sorts with what to do. Seeking that sort of companionship and mutual trust is something that doesn't come naturally to me. My family has always been the sort to maintain a strict balance of power over the people that we employ, and I have worked hard to break that trend. That being said, I can't expect a newcomer to understand me the same way that Bernie did. As soon as they get into my mansion, I can't help but feel unease. I have a list of guidelines that I expect them to obey, and questioning them isn't exactly something that I would recommend. First and foremost is the fact that at 7 o'clock sharp, they are to escort me to the basement and promptly lock me up until morning. There can be no room for error in this department. I know that in the past, before Bernie, I have had housekeepers considering waiting until 7:30, or even barely 13 minutes past 7. There was even a moment where Bernard had gotten a call around 7:03, and he came into my study to find that it had already happened. The poor man experienced severe burns and lacerations. I literally had to beg him to stay. As you can see, a single minute can be the difference between life and death. I have enough scars to prove that. Bernard was actually one of the lucky ones. Well, until the day he wasn't. The process with which you need to escort me is quite simple, but for the sake of clarity I will go ahead and explain the situation. Usually I have dinner around 5:30. This is the perfect time to obtain my medicine and place it in my food. I will of course try to persuade you to do otherwise, but you should insist and remind me that if things were different and Bernie were here, I would listen to him. Of course that isn't true. There were plenty of times that Bernard literally had to hold me down on the floor and press a knife directly against my neck to get me to take the pills. Even then, there were times that the medicine did not do the right thing, and I found myself having to pay him double for the nightly routine. Bernard was quite patient. Having been in the military for quite some time, he didn't hesitate to tell me that he had seen some shit. But each time things went wrong, I could tell he was leaning closer towards not wanting to be in my employ any longer. Once I have taken my medicine, you need to draw up a warm bath and take the dogs for their walks. The dogs shouldn't be anywhere near the house at night. They aren't safe near me, and quite frankly, neither are you. Bernard made this mistake once as well. Again getting a call that distracted him from his duties, and the dogs were left in the house. I picked up their scent immediately. Despite the fact that he had followed other instructions to the letter, the overwhelming desire to rip them limb from limb couldn't be contained. They were strewn in about 50 different places across the house, and if it hadn't been for Bernard, I suspect it would have been even greater. The man recounted how he had to raise a pistol towards me and fire several times once I was loose. With the bath out of the way, you will need to obtain my wheelchair in the second foyer. I will show you where it's at promptly whenever you arrive. It's an old and worn out from timeless use, but it still does the trick. I found it's easy to be naked whenever preparing for the journey downstairs, and I am afraid this is where you cannot budge. I have soiled so many clothes and ripped apart too many suits to consider the need for it any longer. Completely naked and still wet from the bath, you need to strap me down to the wheelchair, and then take me to my study. I love to try and look up the stars shortly before going down below. Bernard was always kind to offer me a towel, but honestly it just made me become even more infuriated. Anything near me could easily be torn apart, and ruining fine linen is a practice I hate repeating. There may be a need for you to show extra restraint at this point because you might find me in a fit of hysterics or foaming at the mouth as the hour approaches. In such instances, it's better to be on the side of caution and simply escort me to the basement early. Bernard made this mistake as well. Presuming that something had changed about the routine, he contacted the emergency services to seek aid. They did not ever leave the house. Instead, Bernard insisted that he wanted to resign from his tenure, but I told him that he couldn't. Leaving me to my own devices would mean more people like those poor paramedics would find themselves with their skin turned inside out and their eyes gouged out. The key to the basement can be found quite readily in my safe. I will provide you the combination to you once we have succeeded in performing this task at least one night without any incidents. You will need to barricade the door on that first night with as many pieces of furniture and items you can find. I remember that first night with Bernard very fondly. I was quite certain the ordeal would make him leave immediately. The following hours will likely be the toughest for you to endure. It's advisable to stay near the second floor and try to make as little noise as possible. Bernard had decided to listen to music, another practice I recommend you avoid. That sort of thing only tends to cause it to become worse, and he wound up with 2 broken ribs and an artificial jaw. The man has more spirit than most, and told me that he didn't want to leave as he was too fascinated by what he had seen to consider it. There will be screams. There will be noises that you've never heard before in your life. I will beg you to let me out. Do not listen, because Bernard did the day he died. The noises will grow louder. You might even be tempted to leave my property. That would be fatal for you. Dogs don't let anyone leave overnight. Bernard unlocked the door to see if somehow things had changed, and I was returned to my normal self before the waking hour. I remember seeing the terror fill his eyes as he realized this time he wouldn't be able to survive from his failure. I know this likely sounds very offsetting, and I completely understand if you decide to reconsider the position that I am offering, but the pay is considerable, contingent of course on your survival of the first night. I think that's what made Bernard stay so long, although it is quite useless now since there isn't even a body left to bother purchasing a coffin for. I need someone soon though, for if I am left to my own devices, it will be destructive not only for me, but also for the entire population of Rochester. If you can come immediately, I will meet you at the train station and we can discuss all the finer details of this arrangement. Please hurry. There isn't a moment to waste. I can already feel it taking over.